I know what's going on right now in our global market, right? And I know you see it. And coming from that space of, knowing about how global trade affects businesses, what are some of your what would be some advice that you would give entrepreneurs right now that are watching it, going through that, in terms of just projecting or saving their company or saving some peace of mind because they may be going a little bit nuts?
Absolutely. My number one piece of advice is you already have enough stress. Focus on the things that you can control. Look, unless you're in a very big business, and that includes lobbyists at Washington, D.C. and everything else, there's very little, next to nothing, that you can do to affect the global market. Okay. And that is outside of your control. And as difficult as it may be to realize and understand that, you have enough on your plate that you can control. That should be where the majority of your focus and attention needs to be.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Entrepreneurial Truth. On today's podcast, we have Colin Ellsworth. And Colin, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk to you.
Awesome. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Colin, what we like to start with is to let our audience know who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Colin Ellsworth. I have over 20 years experience in business operations on multiple scales. And what I mean by that is I've helped global businesses expand into other countries, as well as just small mom and pop businesses expand into a new township market or into a new product offering. And that's really what I specialize in. I now, in my current phase of life, have my own company, and I was very creative in naming it. I just call it the Ellsworth Company because that's my last name. And currently who I serve is anyone that is interested in scaling. And like I said, there's multiple levels of that. But if you want to grow in any capacity, then I have the services and the abilities and the experiences to be able to help you do that.
Awesome. 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 All right. So I want to dive into a little bit about how you ended up starting your own company.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. I went from a seaside executive at a very large business, like $800 million a year, operating in 22 countries around the world, out of Florida. And now I currently, fast forward, I live in Tennessee in the mountains, and I have my own business. So how did that happen? Number one, that great big business had a lot of red tape and was at the end of their scaling cycle. And they pretty much didn't want to grow anymore. They just wanted to maintain operations at their current level. And my specialty is growth. And if you're not going to grow, then you don't need me. So we shook hands and parted ways. And I looked at my wife and my daughter, and I had a family meeting. I remember we sat down and I ordered a pizza, and we had family dinner. And I said, what do you all want to do? Right now we can, daddy can dive right back in and I could get another big corporate job. Or, we could go and we could make our own dreams come true. So that was a very interesting conversation, and we had a lot of discussion. My daughter especially took the opportunity to dream, and she told me everything that she wanted, which included horses and time outside and lots of trips and vacations and all the wonderful things like that, which, if I really took a minute, those all sounded really great to me too. So did a lot of prayer, did a lot of soul searching, and we decided to move. And we picked Tennessee because, like, the last 3 years prior to this life event, we took vacation in Blue Ridge, Georgia, which is northern Georgia, right in the Smoky Mountains. And that was where we wanted to be. It was what recharged our batteries. It was what made us feel rested. And we just love Southern hospitality. So I said if I could pick anywhere, it would be that area. And the reason why we didn't settle in northern Georgia, but rather Tennessee, is I'm only about 40 miles north of Blue Ridge. But if you cross that state line into Tennessee, there's no state income tax. And so I'm owning my own business. I already pay 15.3% right off the top to Uncle Sam. I didn't want to pay anything extra that I didn't have to. And so we still get all the mountains and the beautiful weather and the seasons, which is something that you don't get in Florida. And that's currently where we're at. And in order to make that dream come true and the reality of moving to where we wanted to be, there's no easy way to dice it, but Eastern Tennessee isn't known for being a booming, wealthy land. In fact, there's a lot of hardworking blue-collar Americans here. There's nothing wrong with that, but it is a far cry from working for a $800 million a year corporation. And so in order to make my dreams come true of being where I wanted to be, I kind of had to forge my own way and start my own company in order to make a certain amount of income. Yeah.
No, okay, you've said a lot in
I
that.
know, I went forever.
You packed a lot. So there's a lot to dive in on. How was the transition from corporate to owning your small business?
That is quite the doozy. I will say one of the biggest things was when I worked in a large corporate situation at that time, and it's not a brag, just to try to paint a picture for the audience of what my days used to look like. I managed two teams, one out of Florida, and then we also had an international office out of Dublin, Ireland. The Dublin, Ireland office had about 9 people that reported to me, and the Florida office had about 14 people that reported. So if you add it all together, including myself, there's somewhere just south of 35 people that, we were managing, operations on a very large global scale. So with that many people and that many things going on, my days were jam-packed. My schedule was full. In fact, my schedule was blocked as little as 10-minute increments. So 10 minutes you're doing this, 10 minutes you're doing that. I even got to the point, some days I had to schedule restroom breaks and things like that, because otherwise it just wouldn't happen. I was that busy. And so it was kind of a culture shock to leave that, now do your own thing. And it's like, well, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, half my day is going to be taken up by firefighting and emergencies and people that need me. But I didn't have anybody on my team in my own business that needed me. And so it was a welcome change, but it was kind of a shocker to me of, well, there's no one knocking at my door. My phone's not ringing. I have time to get actually my own list of things done, which was refreshing, but also at the same time, kind of daunting. I was used to being relied upon by certain people, and now it's no different, right? I'm relied upon by my wife and my daughter to provide an income. So there's still that pressure, but it's not the same thing as, hey, help me with this issue that just came up, or, the ocean freighter that has, millions of dollars worth of our products got delayed at the port, and what are we going to do? I don't deal with those things unless a client brings them to my attention now. So that was probably one of the biggest differences in what my day looks like now.
Oh, okay. So you're coming from a much larger perspective where you had a global business that relied on you, and now you have your business that relies on you to bring income. The pressure is different, but what is the mindset shift that it takes for you to switch from that mindset to where you are now?
It's really not that different. In fact, one of my selling points to clients is I bring you all that experience that the quote unquote big businesses will use, just minus all the red tape. Mm-hmm. So my mindset really doesn't change. I always try to find the most efficient solution to the problem that we're facing. dealing with businesses that want to scale or businesses that want to grow, that can present itself in a lot of different ways, like I said. But based on the unique situation that the client has, I tackle that the same exact way. What is the most efficient way to accomplish the goals? And then how can we go about getting that done in the most efficient way possible? And I'm not a traditional business consultant. I just, by my nature, I'm very hands-on. So if you work with me, you quickly find out that I don't just send you a couple of emails and pat you on the back and say, you can do this. I quite often am, you get on the call with me and I'm like, I've been working on this for a couple hours and this is what I think we should do. And in fact, I've already done this for you. What do you think about this? And most of the time people are very appreciative of that, but sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming for people if that's not what they've expected. But I'm like, you got a problem.
Let's fix it right now.
Let's fix it right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's your mindset coming in from what you used to have to tackle. And your ability to be able to tackle that is definitely probably going to be different than someone else that never experienced that kind of thing.
Yeah. And honestly, my mindset these days, don't get me wrong, if you are a business owner and you have a problem that you cannot solve on your own, then it's the biggest mountain in the world. And I don't mean to belittle that by any stretch of the imagination. Believe me, I understand. I am a business owner. I have issues. And if I don't solve them, they become very catastrophic for, my income and my ability to, own my own schedule and everything else that's important to business owners and entrepreneurs. But because I have tackled multi-million-dollar issues in other countries that I have no ability to see or put hands on or anything, quite often I'm much more able to jump over that first hurdle, which is, oh my gosh, this is such a thing. I have no idea what to do. It's so big. I can't wrap my arms around it. That's a smaller step for me these days because I'm like, well, compared to some of the problems that I've tackled, this one's not so terribly large. We can go ahead and get this just knocked out today.
Wow. And let me ask you, which is rattling on my mind. Do you have the same level income goals? Like being in that situation, seeing how big a company can grow. Are you looking to grow your business to that level?
No, I'm not. One of the things about, Florida is the southernmost state. It is, but for a lot of people don't count Florida as quote unquote the South. And one of the reasons why I love living in Tennessee is just the pace of life. I like being able to take things slow. I love sitting on the porch with a glass of tea. Okay. And I do not want my day to be booked into 10-minute increments. I've already done that. I've already been there. I've already had that phase of life. To me, success looks more like my house is paid for. I have happy clients. I get to spend time with my family. I get to work on my hobby farm / homestead. And that to me is success. As long as I can get those things done, and those are goals that I have that are not yet accomplished, but as long as I'm making progress towards those goals, I, in my own mind, am a success.
Oh, okay. Well, I love that you jumped into success because success looks different for everyone, right?
Yes.
You can be successful at that global level, successful family level. For our audience, for our listeners, because we have multiple entrepreneurs at different stages of the game listening to this podcast.
Great.
Can you give us 3 tips that if they were to take today, they could act upon and see some real change in their business?
Yeah, absolutely. So tip number 1 is don't be afraid to open the hood. Okay. And this is a car reference for those that aren't mechanically minded, but open the hood. Check the oil level, check the coolant level. Are all the parts and pieces there and operating as they should be? And so to translate that to a business, do an audit, a self audit. It doesn't have to be long, but know where you are at, know what is working very well, and also don't be afraid to dive into what's not working. So that's my tip number one. Tip number two is don't be afraid to cut the fat. Okay. You're an entrepreneur. The decision lies with you. You are the end all be all decision maker. And the longer you take to make those decisions, the more unjustifiable suffering that you're going to go through. And so when I say don't be afraid to cut the fat, yeah, some decisions suck. I've had to drop clients that wanted me to work for them for free, or that would tell me that they could pay me at the end of the month if I just did the work, and as tempting as that is, right? Because believe me, I know I don't know what your services are, but let's say you charge clients $5,000 a month. A $3,000 payment is better than a $0 payment, right? I've been there. I justify that. But cutting the fat to me means make those hard decisions. Why service a customer that's going to be a pain in the butt like that when you could excuse them from your area of influence and allow someone that would be a perfectly content and compliant client to join you at the table? Make room and cut the fat. And then my third tip would be never stop moving. It's very difficult for entrepreneurs to turn off in their mind, but there's a saying here in Eastern Tennessee that a job begun is a job half done. And so when I say never stop moving, I'm not talking about the actions in your head in the planning phase, because everyone loves to plan, especially if you have an entrepreneurial mind. You're always thinking, you're always planning. And my third tip is get boots on the ground. Start doing stuff. If you've been thinking about something for a week or two, it's very rare that you're going to come up with an idea now at this phase, at the 2-week mark, that's going to be drastically different than what you've already come up with. So get boots on the ground, get going. Like I said, a job begun is a job half done.
Oh, love it. And working with so many people, what do you feel is the number one, or what do you hear is the number one complaint or fear that entrepreneurs have?
Cash flow. Easy. Cash flow. I don't have the money to hire you. Mm-hmm. Number one is usually what I hear all the time. And I don't have the money to do what I want to do. Mm-hmm. It's quite easy for me because I don't publish this anywhere, but when I talk to people, I usually tell them, whatever you pay me for my quote unquote fee, I pretty much can guarantee a 100% ROI. What that means is whatever you pay me, I will save you in your business that expense somewhere along the lines of our contract, which means I essentially work for you for free, or you get my services for no more of an expense than you're already incurring. And my ability to do that is, well, I cut out all the waste and the inefficiencies and the extra spending or the lower profit margins than you need. There's multiple ways to find that money in a business. And you don't have to be a multi-million-dollar business to find quite a lot of money. One of my clients, he runs a crew. He does tree services and excavation and landscaping. And you wouldn't believe the amount of inefficiencies that were there. And, some inefficiencies you welcome. Like, for instance, at the end of the week, he doesn't mind if his crew leaders fill up their trucks with gas, which is a huge expense for him. But that's kind of a bonus, and he kind of counts that as payroll. So, but it is, in my line of work, an inefficiency. So just because I identify it doesn't mean we have to cut it out. But, there's that. And then there's other things, like, for instance, he didn't mind if the people wanted to fill up their trucks with gas at the end of the week, but he did mind if they wanted to take all the tools and heavy equipment and chainsaws and what have you home for their own personal use, right? That's a lot of wear and tear on machines that he wasn't getting compensated for. So there's just things like that that are always there on the table that you can look at. And so in terms of cash flow and fixing cash flow, go back all the way to my first tip. Don't be afraid to open the hood and do a self audit. Where, if you don't have money you better know where it's going and be okay with every single dollar being spent. If you are and you don't have money, well, then we look at the sales process and getting you more clients to generate more income.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how hard do you find it is for clients to fix that sales process? Do you have any clients that are combative, like, I have this process, it's been working for me, and then you're introducing these new ideas and they're just not receptive to it? Or
I do have a few. A lot of people are like, well, this is what I do and this is what it's worth. And I'm like, well, I understand that. But at the same time, look around, how much has your own individual grocery bill gone up for the same amount of groceries?
right.
And then have you charged your clients more in that same time frame? So I'm not saying you're incorrect, but quite often I talk to people and they're like, my services are worth, and they'll insert whatever they were worth back in, 2020 or 2017. And I'm like, you're correct. The last time you looked at it, you were bang on the money. But now we're 5, 6, 7 years past that. Your services are worth quite a bit more according to the market. And I do have some clients that are reluctant to do that. And I understand. You have clientele, you've built a loyal following. You don't want to do anything to disrupt that because it's taken a lot of work. But there are ways to soften that blow to your customer base. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that a lot. I mean, everyone they're afraid to charge what they're worth, even though they know they're undercharging for their business or their service.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, if you have friends or family and you're including them in your service and you want to cut them a deal, look, I'm not saying that everybody has to pay the same rate. That's one of the shockers that I encounter quite a bit. And to me, it's kind of a flabbergasting thing. Let me introduce you to one of the biggest secrets in the corporate world. Nobody pays the same amount, right? Everybody pays something different. The only thing that's the same is the service that you get. And big business is going to sell it to you for whatever they think they can get out of you for. Now, translate that to mom and pop who know if I, for whatever reason, if I plant a row of flowers, that's $50 and I charge $50 to everybody no matter what. I understand because it makes things simple and it's easy to do and easy to calculate. But if you are planting flowers for $50 and you have never raised your prices for the last 10 years, everybody that's currently a client, great. Keep charging them $50, keep them happy. But all your new clients, go ahead and charge them $75. I guarantee they won't complain. I guarantee you won't have any issues. And now you're making 50% more than you were before. And that's a very simplified example, of course, but just a simple step like that can have monumental impact on your cash flow.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And what do you think is the most important math for a business owner or entrepreneur to know? We just spoke about cash flow. What else is important in running a business in order to keep it, sustain it, right?
Yeah, there's two schools of thought. One is I have a business loan, and so I can do whatever I want, and as long as I make that payment, I'm good to go. And that is a popular business model. It's not my favorite, though. I'm a fan of running businesses that are debt-free. That way, any stress that you have is your own generated stress. Because you know what? You own that business, not the bank, not Charles Schwab. You own that business and it's yours. And the only person that you need to pay is yourself and your staff, if you have a payroll. And that's a much different mindset than, well, I'm able to make the payment, so what's the big deal? To me, with my goal is to scale businesses, one of the things that I'm going to tackle right off the bat, and if we can't accomplish it, then we'll at least create a plan for you to do it on your own later or over the next several years, is get out of debt, run your business debt free. Trust me, you're going to sleep better at night and you then free up whatever that payment was. And believe me, I've seen business loans like $500 a month, and I've seen business loans like $25,000 a month. It just depends on the scale that you're at currently. But if you don't have to make that payment, what would you use that money for in order to grow your business?
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty powerful question, and it floors a lot of people because I think it's just, like I said, it's a very popular thing. It's how a lot of people grow their business. And there's really nothing wrong with it aside from the fact that it's always meant to be a temporary tool to get you going. It's never meant to be a long lasting crutch. So that would be my advice to a lot of people is do a little bit of dreaming. Whatever that payment is, times 12, what would you do if you had that much money every year?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It can be a pretty powerful exercise.
The interest that you're paying on that and how hard you have to work to pay that is insane. Absolutely. Wow.
It can really be crippling if you're not careful.
Yeah. Wow. I'm loving it. All right. So I know what's going on right now in our global market, right? And I know you see it. And coming from that space of, knowing about how global trade affects businesses, what are some of your what would be some advice that you'd give entrepreneurs right now that are watching it, going through that, in terms of just projecting or saving their company or saving some peace of mind because they may be going a little bit nuts?
Absolutely. My number one piece of advice is you already have enough stress. Focus on the things that you can control. Look, unless you're in a very big business, and that includes lobbyists at Washington, D.C. and everything else, there's very little, next to nothing, that you can do to affect the global market. Okay. And that is outside of your control. And as difficult as it may be to realize and understand that, you have enough on your plate that you can control. That should be where the majority of your focus and attention needs to be. So don't worry about the 90-day pause on tariffs and focus on how am I going to accomplish all of these orders? How am I going to under promise and over deliver? How am I going to convert leads to clients or customers? How am I going to generate employee loyalty? How am I going to pay for the Christmas party at the end of December? Okay, those are all things that are within your control at a variety of scale that you and your actions now today directly impact. Again, like I said, there's very little that you can do to impact the global market and vast government political scale and everything else. I'm not saying ignore them, but I am saying ensure that you're giving it an appropriate amount of time and attention. And it shouldn't, by any stretch of the imagination, capitalize on your time or your fears or your stress.
So let me get your opinion on something. In a recent conversation with someone, they were referring to, they went to go and buy materials, right? And when they went to buy the material, in this case, it was tile, right? And they were saying they went there, but they're saying, okay, because of the taxes or tariffs coming in, they've already started to pre-charge a higher rate for the flooring, even though the flooring is here. What is your take on that? And do you think other businesses that are importing should start to do that in order to compensate for what may or may not come? That's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, do you think that the consumer should have grace for these people doing those things?
Yeah. So the first part of the question is, what do you do? There's a couple different ways that businesses can operate. So The first is I have my own warehouse. I have a lot of inventory. I own that inventory until I sell it to a customer or a client. In that particular case, I am a proponent of fair and honest trade. Look, I'm not saying that you can't apply a markup or a margin to your own materials when you sell them. In fact, you should be. You have to cover the cost. You have to pay for that warehouse. You have to pay for temperature control and lighting and insurance and everything else. Believe me, I know. So you should have a markup on it. I do not think that you should take advantage of a current situation in fear mongering to gouge your potential clients. You bought it for a price, apply your markup, whatever it is, and that should be your price. Now, if your price increases, then you need to pass that along to your customers. But I wouldn't say try to get ahead of the curve and jack up your prices now. If you didn't pay a premium for those materials, then your client shouldn't. And as a matter of fact, I think it's a selling point if you keep your prices the same and your neighbor next door is jacking up his prices, right? Well, then you can very simply go to clients and your quoting process and go, look, we bought all this before, so it's not affected. You're going to get the old pricing. You're not going to have to suffer or pay a premium. I think that's a win for your business, your reputation, your client loyalty. The second part is, and I bet you already know the answer, do I think that customers need to suffer through and pay that? No, absolutely, I don't. I am a big proponent whenever I look at systems for a business. The focus is usually, well, how does it affect me, the owner? How does it affect my employees? I usually encourage people, well, take a look at it from the customer's perspective, the customer's point of view. What is easiest and simplest to you as a business owner might not always be the most pleasing to the customer. And if you're wanting to scale, reputation is everything. You want people saying good things about you. Matter of fact, you want people saying great and amazing things about you. You want them to leave you 5-star positive reviews. You want them to sing your praises. You want them to tell their family members at Easter dinner how wonderful you were and how they should use whatever it is that you're selling, right? That's what you want. And so make them happy at all costs. And so that's a pretty simple answer for me is if you're not doing that, then I would encourage you to open the hood, take a look and do a self-audit. Absolutely.
I love it. I love how it always goes back to that question or that statement to take a look under the hood.
Yep.
Okay. I know we've spoken a lot about all these different things. Can you tell our audience how they can find you, your website, best ways?
Sure. Absolutely. Well, I am currently located in Eastern Tennessee, but I have clients in Michigan, Florida, Arizona. So I'm basically the 48 states. One of the things about what I do is I don't have to be physically present, although I love to be. And I got one of those extra thick passports, because I travel so much, and I ran out of space. So they gave me an extra 35 pages. So I go everywhere all the time. I could show up and I can get a lot done in a business day, especially if you're paying me to be there. Time and resources is precious. I do not look down upon the fact that you probably made a sacrifice for me to be there. We will do amazing things when I'm there and when we're working and knocking our heads together. Now, that being said, how can people find me? The easiest way is my website. It's theellsworthcompany.com. And my last name, Ellsworth, is spelled with 2 L's, so ELLS Worth. But we do also have social media, of course, Instagram, Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. A lot of people, especially business owners, find me on LinkedIn. So it's just Colin Ellsworth. Again, 1 L in my first name, 2 L's in my last name. And you'll find me. I'm pretty, not to toot my own horn, but I'm pretty popular on LinkedIn.
I love it. I love
a lot
it.
of people. So yeah, you'll find me. I'm usually, if you type in Colin Ellsworth, I think it's me as the top result. And then the only other Colin Ellsworth, he's like a professional hockey player. So he comes up quite a lot too, but you'll know the difference between hockey player and, strategic operations partner.
Well, I'm sure that also plays to your advantage.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's words sharing a name with some famous people. Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Is there anything that you want to leave our audience with today that you think is like mind shattering?
Yes, of course. Well, I have to think of it, but yes, of course I want to leave on a good note. I guess if I was an entrepreneur, what I would want to hear, and again, there's multiple personality types and everything else that come to play, but what's going to have the most impact to the most amount of people? It's a very simple message. You can do it. You might not know how, you might not know when, you might not know where, okay, but believe me, you're already miles ahead of people. If you are a business owner, you're miles and miles and miles ahead of the average Joe who was too afraid to get started, who did not take the risk, who just couldn't overcome their fears. So look at me. You're there, you've done it, and you can keep doing it. I know it's hard, but there's help available. If not me, then certainly someone else. There's lots of people that want you to be successful and are willing to spend a great deal of time and effort on helping you accomplish your own specific dream. So that's really what I want to leave people with. We could go down the rabbit hole of business consultants and their reputation and what they charge for versus what you get. And maybe that's a podcast for a different time. But today, there are people that genuinely want you to be successful and to succeed. And it's only usually a phone call or a text message or an email away. So if you're feeling stuck or if you're feeling overwhelmed, there are solutions. And like I said, for 100% ROI, I mean, what do you have to lose? Like, okay, I'm going to have to pay a fee. But if I could tell you that I'm going to find you that fee and cut that out of your expenses so that your net money out the door increases $0, then why are you suffering? You really shouldn't be.
I love it. I love it. It's taking that first step in anything. It's taking that first step. Mm-hmm.
Yep, it's the first step, and it's the fear of the unknown. It's, well, I've never had to rely on somebody before. No. You're not relying on a business consultant, right? The business is yours. You're not selling it. You're not bringing in a new partner, right? No, that's not what's happening here. You are stuck on a current problem. It's temporary. We're going to go ahead and fix it for you so that you can move on and encounter a higher level problem. Now, I'm not saying that to be discouraging, but if you're not encountering problems, if everything is gravy for you, then quite honestly, you don't have your foot on the gas pedal enough.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. Oh. Yep, because problems come at every stage of the game.
Yes, they do.
Maybe we should rename it. Maybe it's not really problems. Maybe it's opportunity to solve something new.
You're correct. Yes, that is a much more positive framing. It should be called opportunities to overcome. Yes.
Oh, love it. Opportunities to overcome. You've heard it here, right? I love it.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Colin, thank you so much for being our guest on the show today. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. Everyone, I will link his information at the bottom of the podcast. Colin, again, always, it was a pleasure seeing you again, hearing from you again.
Thank you again so much for having me. I had a blast, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.